Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I have got my first impressions for you on this mystery knife that YD Knives sent to me. His link to his Instagram will be down in the description below, so you can check him out. Thank you again to him for sending this to me to check out and to review. When he sent the box of knives, he said, hey, I threw something else in there. I'll let it be a surprise, but it's S35VN and it's under $100. And so my brain was going crazy trying to figure out what it was. And this is not one of the things that I guessed, but somehow he's telepathic and knew that this is a knife that I've actually been meaning to check out for a long time. I remember, gosh, it had to be quite a few years ago, before I was deep into knives like I am now, but I've been carrying and using knives my entire life, and I grew up on Cold Steels. I remember thinking to myself, I want to get a new knife. And what I grew up on, again, was Cold Steels. So I looked on Cold Steel's website, and at the time, my budget for knives was much less than it is now. Like what I was used to spending on a knife for myself if I wanted a new knife was going to like Big Five and getting something for under 40 bucks, or going to the Cold Steel parking lot sale and getting something for cheap there. So a knife that I carried for years was the Cold Steel AK-47, which had kind of like a wave type feature to open it. It wasn't quite an Emerson wave, but functioned the same. And it was the one before they did the backlock ones, or maybe it was just a run they did that weren't backlocks. It had like an Axis style lock. I don't know. I'd love to get another one of those one of these days. I gave it to a buddy years and years ago, and now it would be fun to have another one just to experience something that I used to carry so much. I have so many memories with that knife. Anyway, when I decided I wanted another knife, I looked on Cold Steel's website, and I remember seeing the code 4. I think it was right when they came out. I don't remember when that was, but if you do, that'll give you a hint as to when this was happening. And I remember seeing this knife, and I think at the time they were touting it as being like a designed for law enforcement type of knife, or they were at least marketing it in that arena. And I thought it was really cool. And this was before I had enough discernment or experience with knives to know that I wasn't really a fan of the backlock. And I almost bought one of these. This was so long ago now. And I didn't, because it was just a little more than I wanted to spend. I remember like trying to convince myself to splurge on it, but money was tight at the time. I did not have the budget, so I never got it. And then as I've kind of progressed in the knife hobby in recent years, I've seen this knife continue to get some praise for actually being one of the best models that Cold Steel makes, and for having so much good going for it. Now, these days, I know that backlocks aren't my thing. If you've followed my recent videos with the Spyderco Native 5, that fluted carbon fiber S90V1 I have, I love that knife. That was the first time I gave a backlock a real try in recent history, and I adore that knife. I carry it a lot to this day, but I still don't like that it's a backlock. Backlocks are not my favorite. I prefer almost every other locking mechanism to backlocks. Not because they aren't structurally sound. They're some of the best for actually locking a blade into place. I just don't like using them. I don't like the one-hand operation is not very good. Usually the actions on knives for deployment are less fun because they're backlocks, the way that they function. This one actually is quite good, the action, but I would prefer this knife in another locking mechanism. I can say that already right now, but so many people have been speaking very highly of this knife, and it's funny how perception changes. Now I look at this as almost a budget offering. Sub $100, this is kind of a budget offering compared to a lot of other knives out there, especially when you consider the materials you're getting. This is S35VN blade steel, which I've had my beefs with S35VN. If you've watched my channel enough, you'll know that S35VN is far from my favorite steel, but it's a very good steel. And for under $100 to get this much of it, ground well with a great edge on it, decently thick stock, well made, that it's pretty good. I think these cost like $85 or something. I don't want to give an exact price because I'm probably wrong. I'm terrible at that. But sub $100 to be getting S35VN done this well, and Cold Steel is usually really good at their heat treats as well. That's a good steel for the money, for sure. So we've got For a backlock, let me do that again. For a backlock, an action I can kind of spidey flick. I got to give it a little wrist and whatnot, but it's smooth at least. S35VN blade. I think these handle scales are aluminum. If I had to guess, I doubt they're titanium, but they're lightweight full metal scales. And what's immediately apparent when you get this knife in hand is how slim it is. This is a really slim profile on this knife, and that can be a bit of a dangerous thing. Oftentimes I find that slim, like this dimension, slim knives are uncomfortable for me in hand. But here, this knife, the ergos are, it's shocking to me how good these ergos are. These are fantastic ergos. The way that these grooves are cut from my hand work excellent, especially with how smooth this handle material is. I need something to be locking me in here, and the shaping on this handle, I feel so locked in on here. This is a really well done handle. The profile on it just works. All the edges are knocked down and chamfered well. There's no like real sharp points on this knife. There's spots where it comes to a point, but it's not sharp. It's really not. There's no jimping anywhere. Kudos for that. I can't stand jimping when it's not needed. And on here, it's evidence that it's not needed. The only thing close to jimping is right up here. I wouldn't even call that jimping. It's like there's these divots, and it feels really good in hand. I'm thoroughly impressed with this knife. Also, for being such a big knife, this is, I don't know how big this blade is. It's over 3.5 inches. It's got to be. And with such a generously sized handle for it, I would think, seeing this knife like set next to one of my other knives, that this knife would not be that great in pocket. But because it's so slim and because it's so smooth, it's awesome in pocket, like super comfortable to carry. It's pretty tall this way, but the way it goes in pocket and kind of tucks toward the back, and your hand goes right past this super smooth section here with this backspacer filled it all in, like it is really, really nice in pocket. I like it quite a bit to carry. So here are my real honest first impressions of this knife. I should also mention before I do, this is wearing a Deep Carry MXG Gear clip. This is not a factory clip for this knife. I don't know which one comes on this from factory. I'm sure I could look up a picture and describe it, but I haven't done that. So this is an aftermarket clip. Everything else about this knife is the way it comes from Cold Steel. So for those of you wondering if that clip fits, somehow it does, which is cool. It just takes 2 of the screws, but that's good to know if you're looking to put a Deep Carry clip on this one. Anyway, my real first impressions of this knife. I'm going to be having it in pocket for about a week before I do my full review, but this is the way I feel about it after having it in pocket 1 or 2 times and cutting very little material with it. I've just cut through some cardboard with it to see how the edge did. Here are my first impressions. The hollow grind is done really well. We get a nice thin-ish behind the edge profile. That's totally like EDC thickness goodness for me. I like that. We've got a Tanto, which I'm not always a big fan of Tantos. I had my Benchmade bailout reground into a drop point. I generally prefer drop points to Tantos. Something about a Cold Steel Tanto to me though, maybe because I grew up on Cold Steel, like I said, and I thought they were so cool when I was a kid. I just still have this kind of nostalgia for them. And I also think they do Tantos really well. It's a compound grind technically. We've got hollow grind here for this whole flat, and then to come up to the Tanto, we've got a flat grind, which gives us a very, very sturdy tip. This knife for piercing tasks will be excellent. And if you don't believe me, I'm sure Lynn Thompson has shoved this into a car hood on video so that you can go see for yourself on their Cold Steel videos, which I also grew up on, them cutting pigs in half with swords and stuff, and I loved it. So yeah, this blade is really well done. S35VN for me is okay, but for the price, it's excellent. Sub $100, this much, this well done. S35VN, that's great. It really is. This one, as you can see, is made in Taiwan. Doesn't bother me one bit. But yeah, so blade is a total pass. That's great. Ergos for me are way better than I expected they would be. Is it the best knife ergonomically I've never handled? No, I'm not going to pretend it is. But for how thin it is, and for having grooves in the handle, which can really be hit or miss for me, it's shockingly good. Very, very good in hand. Carry is excellent. Like I said, I was supremely surprised when I put this knife in pocket how comfortable it was to carry. Really, really, for its size, excellent to carry. The weight, because of how thin it is and because of just the way they've constructed it, the weight is totally acceptable to me. I wouldn't call this a lightweight knife, far from it. It's not trying to be ultra lightweight, but again, for its size, for the profile of this knife, and with how thick of a blade stock they're using, for it being a backlock, which adds some weight, this is very, very good in the weight department for the size. Knives this big, I do not expect to be this light, which does also add, I think this is aluminum. I feel like that adds to my suspicion that it's aluminum. If it's titanium, even more value for your money, but I'm pretty sure it's aluminum. It feels, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so that's carry, ergos, blade. I don't really know much else there is to talk about it. I guess aesthetics. I feel like it's fine looking aesthetically. Action, I already kind of mentioned. It's a backlock, so I don't like the action. For a backlock, it's a good action. I can flick it out. I can close it one-handed if I need to by dropping it down and then doing this whole number. That's fine. If this knife was a frame lock or a button lock or a liner lock or an axis lock or basically any other type of lock, I would like it better. So that's just me. If you like backlocks, then this is a knife I definitely recommend. If you're meh about backlocks, this is still a pretty compelling offering. I feel like this also, with how sturdy it is being a backlock and how large it is and how solid this lockup is and the blade grind and the blade steel and all of that, this could be a really good option for somebody who's looking for a knife to use outdoors, or who works a very demanding, a job that's demanding for your knife, where you're cutting through hard materials often, you're having to resharpen pretty often, you need a reasonable level of toughness out of your gear, and you're going to be hard on it. This is comprised of components and a lock type that will be good for hard use, but B, it's also pretty inexpensive to get what I perceive will be a high level of performance out of a knife. And Cold Steel's great at that. Cold Steel's really good at giving you a lot of performance for your dollar. Are they always the most exciting to look at, the most fun to play with? No. There's a reason why my collection isn't all Cold Steels these days. But if you're looking to get performance out of your tool for the dollar that you spend, there's a very good argument to be made there. So anyway, this is just my first impressions. I will be carrying and using this knife. I'm not going to use it hard because it's not mine. I'm not going to be batoning with it or chopping or anything crazy, but I'll use it for EDC level tasks a couple of times, and I'll carry it in pocket enough to become familiar with it. That way, in about a week, maybe just more than that with how many knives I've got on my plate right now, you'll be seeing a full review on this guy. And my first impressions are really good. They really are. It's fun to get something that I have a memory of wanting for so long. And even though my tastes have changed quite a bit, it's fun to get something that I thought would be cool so long ago, and to kind of have confirmed that it was that cool. Like when I almost bought this knife that time, I would have been so thrilled, so thrilled if I actually had. I really would have. This knife would have been so much knife for my pocket at the time compared to what I'd been carrying. And now I wish I had back then. Do I think I'll go out and buy one now after I send this back to YD Knives? Probably not. I don't think this is a knife that in my current collection and with my carry habits that is really for me these days, but I respect it so much for what it is. On first impressions, I can already tell it's so well made and put together nicely, and for the right person who this aligns better with their taste, it's an excellent buy. Yeah, I guess wait for my full review for me to totally confirm that, but my first impressions, if you can't tell, are very, very positive. I like it quite a bit. I'm very happy that I'm getting the chance to check it out. So this is the Cold Steel Code 4 and S35VN, and it is a really, really well made knife.